Rental is a new psychological thriller slash slasher movie slash romance drama. I guess is the best way I can describe this movie. It's a new movie that was released a few weeks ago on VOD. It is directed by Dave Franco. Yes, that Dave Franco, related to James Franco. This is his directorial debut, first movie he's ever directed. It also stars his wife, Alison Brie. Dan Stevens is also in this movie. Jeremy Allen White and Sheila Vand, that rounds out the leads. The premise for this movie is pretty simple. There is a pair of couples who decide to rent out a vacation home, you know, get away from work, get away from life for a little bit. So they decide to rent this big, huge, rich person house that's overlooking a cliff and some water and some trees and a whole bunch of other stuff. There appears to be someone that is watching them inside and outside the house. And so it creates a level of paranoia amongst the couples and a bunch of interesting situations and scenarios that they have to find a way to get out of. Like I said, this movie's kind of a mishmash of different genres. I'm not really sure. Like, sure, you could classify it as a horror movie if you really wanted to. It's really only a horror movie for like the third act and specifically like the last 10 to 15 minutes. Before that, you could call it like a psychological thriller that's focused on the behavior of the characters. Even then, before that, you could probably call this thing a romance drama. So I'm not sure what this thing is. It's kind of a Frankenstein. It really just depends on what part of the movie appeals to you most. I do want to single out Dave Franco. Like I said, this is his directorial debut, and I'm always fascinated by actors who finally jump into the director's chair because I want to see how it transitions, because I think that actors have a unique perspective on what goes on in front of the camera, and they probably know enough about the process behind the camera to make it look good. One of the things I'm always looking for in a movie where there's an actor who becomes a director for the first time is, what is he getting out of these performers? That is a thing that I can definitely single out as a big strength of this movie, is in the performances. The performances here are all terrific, and I think all of these people are genuinely talented actors, but I think that Dave Franco gets them to a place where they really carry the movie through with their performances. In terms of the visual style that Dave Franco brings to this movie, I do think that he actually has a future in directing. I would be interested to see future projects from Dave Franco based off of what he did with this movie. I mean, this guy was definitely in his bag in regards to the camera work. Sure, some parts of it are shot sort of in like the conventional horror film way, like sort of like you're watching a Blumhouse movie. In general, I like the techniques that he brought to the camera work and the editing. There are a wide array of different shots and angles that he goes for. There are some great tracking shots that he uses in this movie. He's really trying to create atmosphere, and that's something that you need to create if you're trying to create a horror movie. But like I said, this movie is not technically a horror movie, so maybe he's just creating an atmosphere for the sake of creating an atmosphere. Regardless, I think he does a really good job at syncing the camera work and the editing and making everything flow and fit well together in frame. I think that Dave Franco definitely has a bright future if we're just judging this movie off the technical aspects. Unfortunately, I feel like your opinion on this movie is probably going to hinge on how much you care about the people in this movie. I mean, that makes sense. These are the main characters in the movie. They're in majority of the movie, like 90, 95, possibly 99, or maybe even less than that % of the movie. These people are in the majority of the movie, so you would feel like definitely you should feel some kind of attachment to them as characters. This is where I feel like the movie started to get itself into trouble, because almost everything about these characters that you find out about them, you're told about this in a big exposition dump from another character. Like, a character will walk on screen and then they'll just kind of spew out a bunch of information about the other characters, and that's kind of how you get to know them during this movie. There's a lot of interesting tension that's kind of established in the beginning of the movie between the characters. There's some scenarios that pop up where you're kind of like, okay, this could be interesting. Maybe we'll see it explored later on in the movie. It really isn't. It's really not explored, like, at all. Like, it's kind of abandoned at a certain point in the movie. It's kind of disappointing, because at that point, once you throw away the tension and the scenarios, the interesting stuff, the concepts that you try to set up, once you throw that shit away, you're relying on me to feel invested in the characters and their relationships. And like I said, a majority of this movie actually feels like a relationship drama. If you don't care about that, then you're not going to care about this movie. And unfortunately, for most of the runtime, I was kind of bored. I was just a series of people arguing and people getting into very predictable situations that you could see coming from a mile away, because the screenplay, unfortunately, is a little bit telegraphed. Every big major moment and decision that characters make in this movie, you can kind of see it coming before it happens. So there's no real sense of surprise, and there's no real sense of suspense for this movie. Tonal inconsistencies all over with this movie. There's definitely some moments that are not played for humor. They're supposed to be serious, but it's the way that it was shot and the way that it was edited. It just comes across as funny. Although maybe I just have a dark sense of humor. I don't know. This could just be a Hannibal thing. Like, there are some parts of this movie where he doesn't want you to laugh, but you end up laughing because, and then there are other moments in this movie where he's going for humor and you're just kind of like, After all that, you fast forward to the end of the movie where it turns into a slasher movie and you just don't care. You're just not invested in anything going on. Cut away from the violence far too often for it to really leave a lasting impact on you as a viewer. As much as I respect the craftsmanship and the filmmaking on display and the performances, I didn't have much else to really hook me into this movie. I think Dave Franco has a future, but as far as a directorial debut, I think he could have done a little bit better. The Rental was a solid enough movie, I guess, but not really for me. I'm gonna leave this one in the Fortress of Solitude. It's on VOD if you're interested in it. So, let's have some brother-on-brother crime on this channel. Who do you like better, Dave Franco or James Franco? And I'm strictly talking about them as an actor. Like, I mean, sure, you could say which one you think is hotter, but they look the same, so you'd pretty much just be arguing with yourself. Put that down in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. And as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.